Greetings, I am the wrestling fan. I may not be the best wrestling fan, but I am the finest. Now, a couple days ago, it was the anniversary of WWE Hall of Famer's Eddie Guerrero's passing back in 2005. The 10-year anniversary, which is just weird to think about, that 10 years has just come and gone like that. I really remember, like it was yesterday, when he passed. It was such a shock. I had just gotten back into watching professional wrestling after seeing WrestleMania 21, and I had rediscovered Eddie Guerrero because the last time I had watched him was in 2000 during the Attitude Era when he was Latino Heat and China was his mamacita. He was very, very entertaining, but at that time, good wrestling matches didn't really matter. Not really saying that there weren't great wrestling matches, but it was more about the characters and the stories, and that's why I watched. I never watched Eddie in WCW. I wasn't a WCW guy. I would tune in occasionally, but by the time I did tune in, WCW was already down the crapper, and Eddie was in WWF. So I never knew how good he really was. I knew nothing about the Guerrero family, the legacy that they had. So in 2005, at WrestleMania 21, I saw Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio in the opening match. And it's not really a match that's remembered. It was kind of the beginning of their rivalry during 2005. And a lot of people don't really remember that match. I think it's one of the best opening matches in WrestleMania history. And even though it was kind of a lot like some of their other matches, I had never really watched Rey Mysterio before. I hadn't really watched Eddie Guerrero have a match like that. So for me, it was really, really exciting. And it got me pumped up for the whole show, for all of WrestleMania 21. And then him and Rey had their rivalry in 2005, and it was a lot of fun. And they had great matches together, great chemistry, great stories. And even though it was silly, like, it came down to Dominic, Rey's son, actually being Eddie's son, and they had a match at SummerSlam of 2005 for a briefcase that held the custody papers of Dominic. Only in wrestling. Like, is that even legal? I don't even think that's legal. But you know what? If you don't take it too seriously, it was just fun. And it was a great rivalry. And Eddie became this monster heel. Like, even times I hated him. You know, and I know what pro wrestling is. You know, I wasn't the wrestling fan in 2005. I was just a fan. And all I knew was WWE and WWF. But I kind of hated Eddie sometimes for the things that he would say and those great promos that he did. He was really hitting his peak as a promo guy. But all of a sudden he went to this rivalry with Batista and they became friends, and Eddie was trying to be a good guy again, you know, and he was kind of winning over the crowd and everything. And then he went for the world title and lost. And then came an episode of SmackDown, November 11th, 2005. That would end up being Eddie Guerrero's final match. Now, the reason why I'm saying all this and why I'm bringing that up is because I was actually at that SmackDown taping to watch Eddie Guerrero's final match in person. And I know this video is a few days past due, but I completely forgot that it was going to be the anniversary of Eddie Guerrero's death, and then I saw it on the Facebook, and I was like, man, I'd really like to make a video, but what am I going to say that's so different from what everybody else says? Well, it finally hit me today, actually, and I was just going to do this unscripted video talking about my memories of his final match. And I even rewatched the match to kind of get my memory back of what it was like to see him. And that day, he fought Ken Kennedy, Mr. Kennedy, and Kennedy came out and did this promo, and he was becoming a really good heel and really hated, and Eddie came out, and that place popped. And if you watch the match, and the match is available on Eddie Guerrero's second DVD set, The Legacy of Eddie Guerrero, it's the final match, it's in the special features, and that pop made me so proud, because, you know, he had been this monster heel for so long, and Kennedy really riled the crowd up, and Eddie comes out to this huge babyface pop, and he came out in the lowrider, and I'm so happy that I got to see him when he was doing the lowrider stuff again, because when he was heel, he didn't do that anymore. and he just looked so happy and so jubilant. And the match is nothing special. It's just a good TV match, and it was short but sweet. But I don't remember anything else that happened on that SmackDown. I mean, granted, it has been 10 years, but, and maybe it's just because Eddie passed away a few days later, but I remember that match, even before I rewatched it. Just, the crowd was really into it. There was the roar of the crowd every time Eddie would get some offense. If Kennedy would get some offense, the crowd would boo. And Eddie just had that crowd in the palm of his hands, me and my friends who were with me at the time included. And he was just so good. Like, to me, he didn't ever really scratch the surface of how good he was. And that's almost scary because he was one of the best of all time, easily in my top 5. And I think he is one of the top 10 best wrestlers ever because he had the total package. But I'm getting off track. And the match went back and forth, but then the ref got knocked out, and Eddie turns to the hard camera and just does that grin, that smile. And I remember where I was. We were looking straight at him. We were kind of high up, but we were looking straight at him. And he just smiled. And we knew what was coming. Lie, cheat, and steal, the Eddie Guerrero way, and he got a chair. He hit it on the ground, tossed it to Kennedy, and the referee turned around, and it was perfect. It was the most perfect cheating moment in all of Eddie Guerrero's matches. That referee turned at the exact right moment when Eddie fell and Kennedy was holding the chair, and Kennedy was disqualified, and Eddie got the match. And because of that, he was going to win a place on the SmackDown Survivor Series team. Unfortunately, he passed away and wasn't able to do that, so Randy Orton took his place. But I'll remember how happy he looked and how happy the crowd was, how happy he made us. And it hit me in that moment. And I swear I'm not bluffing, it hit me. I was like, wow, I really need to take a look at this guy and really watch his stuff. Because I became a fan like that. Not saying I wasn't before. I was throughout 2005, but I didn't realize how good he was till I saw him live. And I'm ashamed to say, like I said earlier, I wasn't the wrestling fan. And by that, I mean, as the wrestling fan, I watch all different kinds of wrestling. I want to watch everything, not just WWE or WWF. I want to watch everything. And Eddie, he wrestled in Mexico, Japan, ECW, WCW, WWF, WWE, and I hadn't really seen much of it. And then a couple days later, we found out that he passed away. And on Monday Night Raw, me and my friends, we watched the Eddie Guerrero tribute show, and I won't lie, it was very, very difficult for me to hold my composure in front of my friends, because they weren't crying, but I was close, and I had to leave the room, because it hit me. It was the first wrestling death I had experienced since Owen Hart died tragically in the ring. And it was my first wrestling death since I became a fan again, and it was a big one. SmackDown, it left a hole in SmackDown that was never the same. And honestly, it left a hole in WWE and it was never the same. After Eddie's passing, that's how big of a presence he was. And I don't think the fans, and I don't even think WWE realized how important Eddie was and how good he was until after he passed away. He was entering the prime of his career. And it's a shame that he had to go. He seemed to finally made peace with his family, his life, his career, and, taken away. But after his passing, I promised myself that I would watch more of his stuff. And I got the first DVD set, and I watched his documentary. I learned about his family, his addiction problems, and it has so many great matches. Him and Art Barr as a tag team, him and Chavo as a tag team, him and Chris Benoit, a great match for the U.S. title when he beat Brock Lesnar for the WWE title. Some great WCW matches. Him and Rey Mysterio, Halloween Havoc 97, still one of my all-time favorite matches. And it showed me how good he was. And then years later, they released the Legacy of Eddie Guerrero DVD set. And that was an awesome DVD set. And so many good matches. And I got to see him and Dean Malenko on both sets. All this classic stuff. And even little TV matches that didn't mean much, but they were still entertaining and they were still really good. I can't really think of any bad matches on the set. And if you want to become an Eddie Guerrero fan, buy both those sets together because they will make you one. They definitely made me one. I hate that I found out too late how good he was and how much of a fan I was, but that's just how it goes. But the point of this video is that Eddie Guerrero, even 10 years later, is still missed by wrestling fans. I still miss him. I think all wrestling fans do. Even the ones who may not have liked him as much do miss him and realize how amazing he was. And I feel honored that of all the times I could have went to a WWE event, and it was my first one since 2000, and the first one I ever went to for a real show. The one in 2000 was a live event, and then this was my first one that was a SmackDown or a Raw. And of all the ones I could have went to was the one where it was Eddie's last match. And it's not like I'm the only one. I had 2 friends with me, and there were 12, 13,000 people there, but when you think about it, 12, 13,000 people doesn't take up any space when it comes to the whole planet. So only 12 or 13,000 people on this planet were there for Eddie Guerrero's final match, and I feel honored that I was one of them. I wish it wasn't his final match. He had a lot more to offer, but it is what it is. But I have nothing but great memories of that night. The only thing I really remember is Eddie's match, and it was great, and like I said, I was honored that I was there, and I'm so happy now that I have watched and studied his whole career as much as I could, and he is one of my top 5 favorites of all time. And I miss him as a fan. I'm sure his family still misses him, but the good thing about wrestling is the fans, if you were that good, they will not forget you, and they will not let you be forgotten. So that was the point of this video, just to give my thoughts about the late, great Hall of Famer and how much he meant to me and means to me to this day, and how honored I was that I was able to see his final match in person. Eddie Guerrero, continue to rest in peace. I'm the wrestling fan, and I promise, kiddies, my first bad match review is coming very soon. Just stay patient. See you around.